Karen stated, her arms crossed defensively, as if anticipating praise. Her voice carried the signature mix of remorse and arrogance she donned like fragrance whenever she was on the verge of igniting a situation. Greg remained silent initially, merely sitting at the kitchen table, scrutinizing the detailed wedding budget he'd examined multiple times that day. The pen hovered in mid-air above an entry marked, "Florist, final installment due Friday." He had already signed the check. It lay partially folded on top of the folder labeled "Rachel Wedding Confirmed." Karen stood in the doorway, neither advancing nor retreating. "Rachel wants Brian to escort her down the aisle," she said without explicitly mentioning his surname, a name that needed no introduction. For a moment, Greg's eyes met hers, and for just a fleeting instant, a hint of vulnerability flashed across her face. Karen hinted she saw something unexpected in him. "She mentions it would hold significance," Karen hurriedly noted, shrug. "You're more than welcome to attend if you wish." The ensuing quietness wasn't casual. It was methodical, frigid, accurate, like a removal. "Pay attention." Greg rose, moved past her without uttering a word, and vanished into the corridor. Karen called out, "Greg, don't make this awkward. It's merely symbolic. Brian's been frequent, and Rachel only senses." The door to his office clicked shut, locked. Within, Greg remained in the dark for an extended period, the room illuminated by the blue light from his screen. Next to the screen was a tiny photo, Rachel at 6, grinning in a pink bike helmet, wobbling on the first bicycle he ever bought her. Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you. In his garage-built piece, Greg found himself while Karen supposedly attended yoga classes far off. He edged forward and unlocked his personal finance files. Here were 14 transactions related to the wedding deposit for the gown, DJ agreement, venue deposit, service fee, makeup artist, honeymoon suite, all drawn from his retirement savings, not out of obligation, but because that's what fathers often do. He navigated to his banking app, moved the total amount spent on the wedding, approximately $36,000, back to savings. He canceled any remaining pending transfers. Next, he opened his email and drafted a message to the planner, "Take me out of all future arrangements. My role is over." With a click, it was sent. There was no animosity, just erasure. Greg retrieved his old journal from the drawer, untouched for years. Inside, he found 2 pages he hadn't removed. 5 years ago, he discovered Karen's prepaid phone concealed behind the laundry detergent. More recently, he secretly acquired a tiny fishing cabin in the Carolinas, purchasing it under a trust without any family connection. He scrutinized flight options. One way, Friday, confirmed. Following this, he did an action he hadn't engaged in for some time. He smiled. It wasn't from contentment. Rather, it was instinctive. Like a man who realized he no longer needed to wait for a gratitude that would never arrive. In the corridor, Karen rapped once. No response. Another knock followed, still no answer. "Greg," she called out from behind the door. "Remember, she's still your daughter." Greg remained silent, not due to malice, because at that instant he questioned whether this was still a truth. At 6:42 in the morning, Greg stood in his garage, gazing at the old red toolbox that had once been Rachel's preferred hiding place for her artwork. Now, the drawer jammed. Lately, everything seemed to jam. The truck key fob remained hanging on its usual spot. However, a fresh, labeled envelope was tucked under the shelf "Cabin Contingency Plan" written on it. Inside were a deed copy, access code, an old phone, and cash. Without any delay, by 7:03, he canceled the last check, marked as voided in his online banking account per client's request, services no longer required. He simply noted, "Just like the others." Calling the planner next, her voice was uncharacteristically cheerful for someone who had just drained him financially over the past month. "Mr. Whitaker, everything is on schedule for the rehearsal dinner. Just a few confirmations for I'm withdrawing," Greg said. "Let me stop you there. I apologize. You'll need to transfer your point of contact. I won't be involved any longer." Another pause followed. I was told you're handling it. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. Then click. Following this, he phoned his attorney. Good morning, Doug. Need an immediate amendment. Rachel's inheritance goes to charity. Hospice fund in Cincinnati. Doug's quiet response hinted at amazement. Greg, are you absolutely certain? I've never been more certain about anything I've done. By midday, Greg closed 4 financial accounts, revised his estate plan, redirected his mail to a PO box in another county, and executed one final transaction from their joint checking $117.32. Enough to raise no eyebrows, but not enough to inflict harm. The decisive act followed. It felt clinical. He opened an untouched folder on his desk. Rachel's first car. Title. He studied the scanned bill of sale for the silver Civic he bought her upon graduation, which she wrecked last year. She never repaid him, nor expressed gratitude. Just said, "You're the father? Aren't you supposed to?" He erased the file, as if it had never been there. That evening, Karen knocked again, more forcefully this time. Greg, open up. You've made your point. She didn't intend to harm you. Greg had vanished by morning. The truck remained. He didn't choose the obvious exit. That would have been dramatic. Instead, a cab arrived at 5:40 m, its headlights off. With one bag in hand, he left without saying goodbye, not even to the dock. At 12:09 p.m., Karen found his note hidden inside the fridge. It read, "Don't water the plants. They're already dead." The message didn't make sense to her then. But later in the day, when Rachel phoned, sobbing about unpaid bills from a florist and a DJ who claimed Greg had canceled, Karen began to sense a tension tightening. Not a fit of anger or a power struggle. Something more serious. Greg didn't storm out. Instead, he meticulously extracted himself, silently, like a man carefully extracting a malignant growth from his own life before it could spread. I swear, Karen said, twirling her mimosa with an arrogant twist of the wrist, he'll return. Greg can't sustain anger. All he needs is for us to plead. Rachel ignored her phone as she deliberated between 2 edited images. One showed her laughing with Brian next to the venue fountain, while another depicted him placing a hand on her shoulder, attempting a fatherly grin. She opted for the second one, captioning it, #clinking glasses, #wedding week blessed indeed. The likes poured in swiftly. Sweet heart emojis. You deserve the best, went the messages. No hint of Greg. At the boutique, the atmosphere was cheerful. Champagne flowed. Karen posed with Rachel before a mirror, seeming as if she herself were the bride. Greg wouldn't have enjoyed this, she laughed, readjusting Rachel's dress strap. He would have scowled at all the hubbub, the fittings, the color samples, as if enduring a kidney stone, she implied with a smile. The bridal assistant returned shortly, her grin tight. Apologies for the interruption, but the final payment on the gown is yet to arrive. Does the system indicate the invoice as disputed? Karen paused. That can't be correct. My ex-husband paid that weeks ago, I'll verify. The assistant responded, already walking away. Rachel dismissed it. It's probably a system error. Maybe he used the wrong card. However, later in the day, another issue emerged at the florist, no payment confirmation, no delivery scheduled. Calling proved futile as the florist's voicemail was full. He's really being childish, Rachel grumbled. Karen remained silent but nodded in agreement. A text from the venue manager now appeared on her screen, one she had not shared with her daughter. Hi Karen, just confirming the rehearsal is still on. I noticed the payment was reversed. We'll need full settlement by Friday or we cannot proceed. Let me know. She swiftly responded, the situation is being addressed. Just a temporary issue. Yet, it turned out to be more than a temporary problem. It was a gradual, calculated deterioration, an unnoticed collapse of everything carefully constructed on Greg's foundation. They didn't realize their base was weakening. Meanwhile, Brian reveled in his moment. He requested additional wine at every meal, hinted to anyone who listened that Rachel required more attention, and casually mentioned Greg as a model in passing. During brunch, as they celebrated fresh starts, Karen lifted her glass and chuckled. At least Brian won't put the guests to sleep like Greg would have. Recall his speech at Rachel's graduation. I thought the principal was about to doze off. Rachel and her friends laughed. They didn't notice the waiter cast a sidelong glance at them, halt with the water pitcher, and sigh before serving another table. Unknown to that gathering, the DJ had already dismantled his equipment following a cancellation message titled, "Client disconnected. All payments forfeit." Nobody was aware that the bar tab Greg had organized for the reception bore a red banner on the vendor's control panel, with payment withdrawn, unresolved dispute written. This information remained undisclosed because no one took the effort to inquire about who still held the reins. Instead, they presumed Greg would brood and submit. However, Greg was not wallowing. Rather, he was calculating, meticulous, and precise. And when everyone eventually realized it, they had already posed for pictures on a stage that Greg had ignited. The first thing they perceived was the heat. It enveloped them like a Julian, Ohio summer wave as soon as they exited the rental car. There were no air conditioning hums, no background music from outdoor speakers, and no staff moving around with clipboards or walkie-talkies. Just a hushed quietness under the symphony of cicadas' distant whine. Rachel fiddled with her rehearsal dress hem, looking puzzled. "Why is it so empty?" Karen attempted to open the front door, but it was locked. In the periphery of her vision, she observed action. A man wearing a blue polo shirt emerged from a side entrance, which was none other than Mark, the venue manager. He carried a box filled with unused champagne flutes and seemed more engaged by the cicadas than the bride. "Hello," Karen greeted, feigning a smile. "Are we here for the rehearsal?" The inquiry came from Rachel Whittaker. Mark didn't bother to retrieve a clipboard. Instead, he said, scratching behind his ear, "Well, there seems to have been an issue." "You mean reversed?" "The deposit was confirmed weeks ago," Karen replied, puzzled. He nodded in agreement. "Indeed, but the final check bounced. Then we received a notification that the entire transaction had been disputed, possibly fraud. Our policy states no funds, no event." Rachel moved closer, her voice stern. "We have a wedding in 24 hours. We've sent out 200 invitations. The dress fitting is at 6. The celebrant is arriving from Atlanta." Mark put up his hands defensively, like a man dodging errant bullets. "I'm just the messenger," he said. "We've sent 2 follow-up emails, no response. I can't let you in, my boss is strict. If we conduct a rehearsal with an unresponsive account, we could be held liable." Karen's voice quivered as she spoke. "Let me just make a call." She moved aside to dial Greg for the 5th time in 3 days. Voicemail again. She didn't leave a message. There wasn't much to say. Rachel was now walking back and forth, her heels clicking against the concrete like gunshots. Where is the florist? They were expecting the arch for the centerpieces by noon. Karen tried calling the florist's number. Straight to voicemail again. Rachel yelled towards the sky. "Incredible. I swear to God, if Greg is doing this to get back at me." But before she could finish, her phone buzzed. Text from Melissa, Florals and Design. "Greetings, Rachel. Our delivery is on hold. According to our contract, non-payment void service. Please contact our office to settle the balance." 1. Overjoyed to help when given clearance, but Rachel angrily discarded the phone onto the ground, which shattered the screen. Brian, as always reliable, was nowhere to be found. Karen attempted to contact him. It went unanswered after 3 rings and switched to voicemail. She left a frantic, anxious message. "Brian, we're at the venue, it's locked. Everything is in disarray. Please get in touch." No response followed. She surveyed the area. Wedding guests started arriving, relatives of the groom, cousins, an elderly aunt with a walker and bad knee. They stood without seating arrangements, unpracticed rehearsals, or understanding why they were under a powerless pavilion in 91-degree heat. To top it off, the sprinkler system suddenly activated at the garden's end, drenching the fancy folding chairs that Greg insisted on upgrading. Karen took out a tissue to wipe her brow. Rachel slumped onto the concrete, her dress crumpled, makeup smeared, eyes devoid of expression. For the initial time, neither spoke. Their silence was eloquent in that instant. It was evident to both that Greg would not appear, Nor had he merely stepped back. He had systematically dismantled the entire affair, his smile still etched on their faces. What once appeared whole and functional turned out to be nothing more than stage props upon attempted use. A sham wedding spectacle, a mere illusion. The two were the only ones persisting in its reality. By midday, the parking lot was filled with bewildered guests in pastel attire, waving programs labeled Rachel and Brian. A new chapter. The ceremony was set for 1 o'clock, yet at 12:12, the DJ station stood empty. No booth, no speakers, only a chaotic aux cable draped over a plastic folding chair, reminiscent of a relic from an age long forgotten. The string lights draped across the arch flickered erratically, half burnt out, the others dim and faltering like they were powered by a weak car battery. Some guests whispered among themselves, uncertain. Was this the intended style? In a hastily converted janitor's closet within the venue's side wing, the bride, Rachel, was slouched in a cheap velvet chair, tears streaming down her face, curlers still in her hair. Her dress remained at the boutique, and Karen had attempted to pay for it that morning with various credit cards, all of which were declined. The boutique owner politely yet resolutely explained, "We can't release it until the balance clears. I apologize." As a result, Rachel found herself in an emergency dress, a department store bridesmaid gown several sizes too large, held together at the back with binder clips. She resembled a child playing make-believe weddings in her mother's old nightgown. "I can't go out looking like this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "People will mock me." Karen knelt beside her, stroking her shoulder. "They won't mock you, dear. They'll empathize." Rachel looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "Where is Brian?" The door creaked open. Striding in, Brian appeared, his dress shirt only partially fastened, sunglasses still upon his face, emanating a scent of whiskey and questionable choices. He carried a takeout cup from a nearby pub and an unlit cigar held casually behind one ear, giving off a roguish pirate vibe. "Ladies," he drawled, spreading his arms. "Are we set for this?" Rachel sat up abruptly. "You're drunk," Brian replied. "Just a tad nervous, darling. I mean, isn't this quite a lot?" He surveyed the janitor's closet as if it were a luxurious suite. "I must admit, I'm uneasy about being a stand-in father. After all, I didn't raise any of you. That was Greg." Brian said Greg's name with distaste, as though the mere mention of him left a sour taste. Karen stood up. "Brian, not now." But he persisted. "This entire situation is peculiar. I thought I was here to assist, not to take over." He waved his hand vaguely towards the dimly lit reception hall. "It seems everyone's playing a part." Karen grabbed his arm, whispering sternly, "Groom and bride are facing a delay or possible cancellation at the wedding altar." The officiant looks uneasy under a sagging floral arch as guests fidget in their seats, overhearing hushed whispers. The groom, Rachel's former high school sweetheart, appears anxious in his tuxedo, perspiring heavily while checking his watch repeatedly. No music, food, or announcements have been made, and the bride has not yet appeared. A waiter carries a solitary platter of leftover finger sandwiches from a previous event. One bridesmaid takes two for her purse. The officiant queries the groom about postponement, but he remains silent, the embarrassment now palpable and oppressive, similar to the thick humidity hanging in the air along with the unlit cigar smoke from Brian. Individuals start to question, one by one. Something seems amiss, not just disorganized but significantly wrong. By 2:10, an older uncle has already departed, and the flower girl's mother is loudly speculating about a prank. By 2:15, someone softly murmured the sentiment shared by all. Where is the groom's father? No one could provide an answer. Yet, the void was no longer tranquil. It had transformed into a spectacle. And this spectacle was a drama. The initial digital stone that set off the chain reaction originated from Rachel's cousin, Megan, known for her permanently fading hair and an online persona as flamboyant as her fragrance. At 3:04 p.m., while standing outside the powerless venue with her now melted makeup collection, Megan posted a tweet amidst nibbles of a soggy cucumber sandwich. The groom's actual father skipped the wedding, paid for everything. abruptly canceled after she chose her mom's lover to escort her down the aisle. The post quickly gained traction, spreading like wildfire within an hour. Admittedly, it only went viral in a small town of Ohio. However, in such a tight-knit community, that's all it takes for things to escalate exponentially. 4 p.m. saw a TikTok post from Rachel's old high school classmate in the parking lot with captions. No food, no music, bride weeping, venue shrouded, groom possibly crying too. It was rumored that the event had been canceled after her father discovered she had been replaced by his mistress. Meanwhile, at Greg's former neighborhood, 3 retirees engaged in a poker game on a porch. Alan, an ex-workmate of Greg's from the county housing board, paused the game and scrutinized his phone. "Have you seen this?" The wedding of Rachel Whittaker had gone viral. "Oh, the one Greg paid for. Seems it's not happening anymore." Amidst laughter, talk shifted across town to a dental clinic break room where someone read out a tweet to Lisa, an old colleague of Karen. Lisa swiftly dispatched it to their group chat Bunko Divas, implying that Karen's past was catching up. Greg had always kept his records, both literally and metaphorically. By dinner time, gossip migrated from the digital sphere to the pavement. Neighbors discussed in driveways while barbecuing. On Milton Street, a bar introduced a new drink offer called the Silent Exit Bourbon Neat, no ice. In Chardon Chatters, the local Facebook group, a post titled, "Did you hear what happened at the Whittaker wedding?" attracted 327 comments within 5 hours. People who had not spoken to Greg for years started recalling cryptic signs and subtle moments when he declined discussing family matters in church. An old community award that Greg received for organizing a fundraiser in 2012 was uncovered. "A man like that doesn't just disappear," one comment read. "He decides when to vanish." And this was no coincidence. Simultaneously, a county register journalist contacted Tom, Greg's brother, who managed the hardware store. The message said, "Hi, Tom. Off the record. Is there any truth to the gossip about Greg backing out of Rachel's wedding? Word has it, he paid for the whole thing and then left. We are featuring small-town chaos in our weekend article." Tom remained silent. He shut his phone, gazed at the counter for a while, then calmly flipped the closed sign. He knew Greg wouldn't utter a word. This silence was what Karen and Rachel found most difficult. He hadn't shouted, didn't storm off, didn't make a defense. Instead, he let the consequences of their actions, heavy as a chandelier dangling from a worn-out cord, take effect. And now, with each tweet, each whisper, every post, that chandelier was plummeting swiftly. The entire town was a spectator to this unfolding drama. By 6:15 p.m., what was left of the reception resembled the devastation after an ill-fated school fundraiser. Chairs were still set up, disarrayed and half-occupied by stunned relatives nibbling on vending machine snacks. The emergency lights above the dance floor flickered like a failing bug zapper, casting shadows over the pristine, untouched dance floor, eerily silent. There was no music, no dinner, no merriment. Guests whispered among themselves, their unsaid thoughts echoing in the air about the struggling wedding ceremony. Nobody had the compassion to end this spectacle. Karen, standing near the gift table, found herself staring at the unwanted array of monogrammed trinkets, now embodying irony with engravings like R&B, "Forever Begins Today." She cracked a bitter smile. Not a slow, drawn-out fall, but a sudden, gasping collapse into the vacant chair next to the silent sound system. She started crying deep, painful sobs that made strangers look away and friends feign ignorance. There was no attempt to console her because even her closest companions were uncertain of their allegiances. Inside the bridal suite, the atmosphere reeked of hairspray and tension, the room sweltering from the malfunctioning AC, while Rachel paced restlessly on the cold tiles, clutching her phone as if it were a lifeline. 4 times she had tried phoning Greg, yet there was no response on the 5th call. It went straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She pondered what to say. "Apologies for spending your funds on rewarding the man who betrayed your spouse. Enjoying the beach while we struggle in shame." Slamming the phone onto the vanity, she gazed at her reflection in the mirror, the store-bought dress clinging awkwardly to her back where a pin had slipped, exposing skin that Greg had once kissed goodnight after reading bedtime tales about frogs and brave girls. Outside the suite, Brian was restless, flushed, and unsteady. "I warned you this wasn't right for me," he snapped. "I can't handle such pressure. I just wanted to assist." "You thought this wouldn't be difficult." Rachel forcefully pushed open the door and glared at him. "It's what you wanted," she said accusingly. "You agreed." "I said yes because you asked me to," he retorted. "You, your mother, and your idealized notion of a perfect moment. I never thought he would actually disappear. Who could do such a thing?" "He was the one who footed the entire wedding bill, Brian. Every detail of it. And I didn't even notice until the DJ vanished just like Houdini." "Perhaps he finally realized what everyone else had already understood," Brian mumbled. "That no one truly valued him." Rachel recoiled as if struck. From the hallway, a guest passed them with a plate holding a solitary roll and 2 melted peppermints. This wasn't a wedding, it was a funeral vigil. Karen locked herself in the suite and refused to emerge. When the bridegroom hesitantly arrived at the door, looking timid, pale, and sweaty, Karen shouted, "Go away," and then there was quiet. Rachel attempted to contact Greg once more, only reaching his voicemail. She gazed at the lifeless screen, her fingers quivering, and whispered, "Dad, please." But the phone didn't ring. Greg's silence wasn't just the lack of sound, it served as a reflection, and it was finally revealing to them who they had become. On Sunday morning, while Rachel lay sprawled on the floor of the bridal suite, still in her crumpled dress, surrounded by withering roses and unfinished apology drafts, a photograph appeared on Facebook. This wasn't posted by Greg. Instead, it was from Dave Holloway, an old fishing companion from his construction days, who had no taste for drama and scarcely understood hashtags. The image showed Greg donning a windbreaker, grasping a striped base with both hands, grinning as if he'd just rediscovered the feeling of tranquility. Behind him stretched the tranquil, expansive Atlantic, unaffected by the devastation he'd caused in Ohio. The caption was brief: "Greg arrived unexpectedly." He claimed he needed fresh air. "Best weekend in years," he declared. No hints of weddings, no allusions to Rachel, Karen, or the collapse. Only pure, unapologetic happiness. Within 12 minutes, someone took a screenshot and sent it to the Bunko Divas group chat. In another 20 minutes, it surfaced in the Chardon Chatters Facebook group with the same caption. As the wedding crumbled, Dad opted for fishing. By lunchtime, it was tweeted, accompanied by a contrasting image: Rachel's crumpled form at the reception versus Greg's peaceful smile by the sea. The meme format added its twist. Abandoned the bride, landed a catch. The sea admires him more than his family did. Mood. With a beer in hand, Greg amidst Ohio's flames. Karen's friend Melanie transmitted the screenshot to her without commentary, only the image and the timestamp. Karen fixed her gaze on it for quite some time before flinging her phone against the wall of her closet. In town, even those who initially approached the situation cautiously were now openly discussing it. The bar's sign read, "Greg's on a fishing trip. Whiskey shot special at $6." Greg's previous coworker, Alan, commented under the picture, "This is what composure in the midst of turmoil looks like." A member from the church choir posted it. He was always the reserved one. Apparently, he discovered the loudest way to speak up. That afternoon, a local reporter finally found the courage to make a move. She sent an email to the forwarding address she'd obtained through public records. Polite and professional, "Hello, Greg. I'm working on a feature about the Whittaker wedding. There's been a lot of buzz. I'd appreciate your perspective." Even just a quote. Greg read it while seated on the cabin porch. Salt air filled his lungs. His coffee was still warm in the mug. He neither responded nor deleted it. After shutting the laptop, he returned to carving driftwood in his hand. This wasn't a pastime. It was merely something that didn't require contemplating people who traded loyalty for show. His silence moved swifter than any scandal, becoming legendary. He didn't need to yell. The wreckage did it for him. With each unreturned call, every picture of him smiling by the ocean, and every public breakdown in Ohio, His calm became potent. Not out of spite, but because Greg Whittaker had finally stopped offering explanations. And when a taciturn man stops explaining, people begin to listen. On Monday morning, the Chart and Ledger's local news blog published what it termed a community snapshot, a euphemism for gossip dressed in journalism's Sunday best. The headline was hard to ignore. Father pays for wedding, then gets replaced by the lover of his wife. His reaction was simple. He vanished and canceled everything. It didn't name names, but everyone knew. Images accompanied the article depicting a dimly lit venue, a crumpled guest list, wilted flowers discarded in a side alley trash can, a blurry screenshot of the notorious Facebook phishing photo, and finally, a cell phone picture of Rachel, disheveled and crying in what appeared to be a janitor's closet. The reporter had meticulously investigated, ensuring the article was balanced and accurate, avoiding slander or baseless claims. Instead, it connected facts with precision, referencing receipts and quotes from public posts before they were deleted, even incorporating a line from Meghan's viral tweet. Within hours, the Ledger's website crashed due to high traffic. By noon, Buzzline Daily had published it under their Human Interest section with the headline, Bride abandons father for mother's former lover who secretly sabotages the wedding from behind the scenes. This is when things really escalated. Twitter was ablaze with reactions. This man is like Thanos in a flannel shirt. Greg didn't react angrily. Instead, he became legendary. Silent revenge is the most potent form of retaliation. The narrative spread across Reddit discussions, private chats, and even popular meme platforms often associated with humor about dads dozing off during NCS. A therapist verified by Twitter posted, "What he did wasn't revenge. It was self-respect reaching its boiling point." Simultaneously, Karen remained seated in Rachel's guest room. The room was dimly illuminated by the radiance of her iPad screen and the weight of her shame. Each incoming message from her inbox brought another unwanted alert. She had avoided opening Facebook that day. Someone had sent her the article with just a skull emoji via text. She attempted to log in to respond, but it was futile. A post, a comment, anything to change the storyline was useless. The top-voted comment under the Ledger article numbered 14K. She hadn't merely destroyed the bridge. She had handed the matches to her affair partner and requested her father to build it first. In the kitchen, Rachel worriedly refreshed her social media feeds. The comments were merciless. Money belonging to father, yet walk not resembling his. Hoped the DJ would take tears as payment. Envisioned replacing one's biological dad with someone who caused family disintegration and believing there wouldn't be repercussions. She eliminated her Instagram, then Twitter, then TikTok. Karen followed suit shortly after. However, by that time, the screenshots were widespread. The internet doesn't mind if you erase something. It retains the memory. Every group chat, discussion forum, and headline conveyed the same message. Greg didn't instigate a massive response. Instead, he vanished. His disappearance reverberated more than any explosion. He did not strive to uphold his dignity. He allowed their betrayal to fester in broad daylight. Now, with the nation watching, Karen and Rachel comprehended something far worse than being shamed. They had underestimated a man who never resorted to shouting because he didn't need to. He trusted that silence would complete what their cruelty had initiated. 3 weeks post his forgotten wedding, Greg reappeared in town without fanfare. No digital updates, no phone calls, no visits to familiar doors. His necessity was lumber, and mending a decaying foundation while others witnessed theirs crumble held an ethereal appeal. So he parked his truck by Holbrook's Hardware, as he had for 2 decades, and strolled in like a man long absent. The bell chimed above the door. The air was still saturated with pine, rubber, and dust, a place where time seemed to drag or stubbornly stand still. He stood in Section 7, contemplating cedar planks, when he heard his unique voice echo behind him. Not harsh, not furious, simply shattered. "Father." Greg hesitated before looking up. The wood grain under his gaze was unblemished, immaculate, uniform. No knots, no decay. Something dependable. He delicately replaced it on the rack. "Father, I beg of you." Rachel's voice faltered halfway through a word. A supplication got stuck in her throat. He finally swiveled around. Rachel stood at the aisle's end, bare-faced, in worn denim jeans and an oversized pullover. Her eyes were bloodshot. No wedding ring adorned her finger. Her phone dangled limply from her hand, as if she had forgotten it was there. She took a step toward him, then halted. "You were correct," she murmured, "about everything." Greg didn't react. His countenance remained unchanged. Neither did he shudder, sigh, or shake his head. Instead, he merely gazed at her. Not as a stranger, not as a parent, as a man recalling a time, far back, when he had witnessed his family pick someone else in a courtroom. As a man who had silently ingested the harshness of being supplanted, disregarded, and mandated to continue grinning while bankrolling the entire show. He drew breath, deep, composed, then resumed his walk toward the wood stack. Rachel advanced cautiously. "Father, I was foolish. I, Karen, made it seem otherwise." Her words crumbled due to her uncertainty about which falsehood she wished to uphold. Greg remained silent, needing no response. He merely took up the cedar plank once more, inspected its edge, and commenced walking towards the checkout. She trailed behind like an unarticulated apology, lacking legs. "I miss you," she implored, now desperate. "I didn't realize how much until you were gone." Greg halted at the aisle's end not to glance back, but to adjust the plank under his arm. Without turning, he delivered a single statement. It wasn't harsh, it wasn't loud, just conclusive. "You made that choice before I did." And so, he advanced towards the cash register, settled the payment with cash, and departed. No embrace, no spectacle, just a man who had been previously abandoned in the wreckage of his own family's emotions. Now, walking away from the remains they created without him. For the first time in Rachel's life, her father declined to mend the situation. He allowed her to stand alone.